You know, the old saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so here we have a 47, I think, snowblower. And the shoes are just starting to wear thin here at the corners. Now, they're not horribly expensive, but what I like to do is to cut a strip of metal and weld it up along here to act as a wear strip. Because for me, that's a lot easier to procure and replace than having to order these, every couple of seasons, depending on how hard it snows and how often this thing gets used. So, let's get these pulled off of here. And I'll probably do these one at a time because, well, I will. And let's get her done. Well, that wasn't very tight, was it? Okay. Yeah, we'll get our bolts out. There's one. So what I got for stock is some 3/4 inch angle. I'm just going to rip it down the middle. And that's what I'll weld in there. Well, let's go. And there we go. All right, so now what we have are two pieces, roughly 3/4 by about 1/8. The other side I did take over on the grinder and kind of took that edge off. But, it would be easier, obviously, if you could order, 3/4 by 1/8 material, but I got this. It's been sitting here. This was just a cutoff piece, and, it's all about saving them beans. And let's be honest, this isn't a show piece. This is just going to get worn down and discarded eventually anyway. So now we'll just got to bend it to match this curve here, and we'll be doing that over on the vise, I think. So let's set up and see how that goes. Now we're not going to get the whole thing done this way, but my thoughts are if we could just get a C-clamp on there and get it established, that's really all we need. Because we're going to clamp this, obviously, when we go to weld it anyway. Of course, if I had a bender, this would go a little easier. Or a ring roller. Two things that are on my want list. Not gonna lie. They may be here sooner rather than later. But alright. That's not gonna stay, of course. That's gonna spring back. But that's fine. Again, this is just to kind of get it established. And we only need to put a couple of welds in. We're not going to weld this thing too hard, because obviously, being that it's a wear item and not something we want permanently attached, because we're just going to have to take it off at some other point. There's no point in getting crazy. So, one weld back in here, a weld back in this side, and maybe a couple short ones in the middle. And I think that'll be just fine. Let's get it on. Let's see, that'll work. Just on the corners there. Still in frame. Works for me. Get this, all these clamps off. Let's go get it back on the blower. I hope you'll excuse all the cuts, you know. And I'm not complaining, mind you, but I do got to point out, it's a lot slower and harder to do things from a wheelchair than it is for regular folks. I'm just saying. Mind you, there are people who take a disability, and I think they, I won't say overplay it. I was saying, you know, and I get it, I think people get hurt, you know, and there's a depression that kicks in and they decide they're just not going to do anything. And I'll tell you, that's the worst thing you can do, is nothing. I may not be that good for too many hours a day of pain-free existence to do stuff like this, but I enjoy it. And I try to be as independent as I can and do most of this with very little or no help. And that in itself is a kind of therapy. It just takes me a lot longer. Now, I did get a couple of emails, and so two people asked about the chair and what that's about and how that came about. Well, I'll tell you. I'll try to keep it short and simple. I was working in a man lift about 60 feet in the air when the lift collapsed, and there was a failure, and that's what happened. So I spent close to 2 years in and out of the hospital, and so my legs don't work. Well, they work, but I don't really feel them. Okay, so I'm not really sure what happened here, but the video stopped recording, which is kind of a disappointment. But you're not really missing out on much. I just kind of went into detail and finished explaining about some of my injuries and whatnot, but I guess we'll leave that for another video. But from there we just bolted the shoe back on, and I flipped it over and got the other side done, and that was pretty much the end of the video anyway, so you're not missing much. Well, I appreciate you watching, and hey, give me a subscribe and a like. I'll try to keep the content coming and try to keep it interesting. Thanks for watching.